Warning, this podcast does not introduce any new information outside the Foundation's curriculum. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey there, Foundations fam, and welcome to one of our very first episodes of Real Doctors, Real Friends Season 4. We are the official podcast of Foundations of Medicine here at the U of A in the MD program. I am your host, Roshan Abraham, along with my partner in medical education, Shireen Hamza.
Hey, everyone.
We hope you had a blast this week and are excited about the start of medical school. It was awesome to meet all of you in person and have all of the chance to interact with you in class. This week, we are joining you on a location at a hidden gem of a garden on campus just outside the education building.
Before we jump into things, how was the summer, Roshan?
It was pretty good. Definitely opportunities for reflection throughout, which I deeply enjoyed. And lots of, career reflection, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to abandon me, are you?
No. Just looking at how to expand my creativity in the work that I'm doing here.
Awesome. I'm all for that.
How about you, though?
For me, it was a nice summer.
Okay.
Last year, I launched a new online course for our program where I got to have some fun applying physiology principles to understanding the impact of viral TikTok challenges and celebrity issues. I even got to flex my true crime muscle and investigate physiology in some legal cases while also exploring the historical roots of many physiological concepts and medical treatments. This year, I developed more new content around the history of the HIV crisis and the potentially fatal one-chip challenge.
That sounds interesting, but also a little bit dangerous.
Possibly, but I'm hoping that an understanding of scientific principles can be helpful and keep our population safer and healthier.
That's true, and certainly one of our goals right here in Foundations. Actually, since Foundations wrapped up last November, we haven't stopped thinking about our block and implementing student feedback from last year.
That's right. You know, Roshan, we're both pretty open about Foundations being a continuously developing work in progress, so it was really great to work with you and our participating colleagues over the past several months, and more recently in the summer months to work with students who engaged in Foundations last year and are now heading into year 2.
For our listeners out there, we covered a lot of ground in updating the block with our curriculum management unit and extensive consultation with a working group that included student representatives, faculty, administrative staff, as well as Dr. Jamie Yu, our pre-clerkship director, and Dr. Lana Bistritz, our assistant dean of curriculum.
Heading into Foundations this year, we've updated all learning objectives, and as we shared in our introduction, we've also updated the content in certain subject areas in response to student feedback, which we value tremendously.
Absolutely. Our block refresh also includes a revamp of our weekly review sessions. So we are really excited to see these changes in practice and hope that we can continue to positively support students in learning and set you up for success. But we need to get into more pressing matters right now, like O Week. How was your week, Shireen?
I have to say that it's been a really great week. To be completely open, I'm usually reluctant to let the summer go, and I did have those feelings. But that feeling totally changed as soon as we had the opportunity to meet the class of 2028 earlier this week. When you've been an academic professional for so long, especially through some challenging times, you can feel tired or worn down, but the enthusiasm and excitement of our incoming class is therapeutic for me, and I can't help but feel energized, and my love for what we do is renewed.
I couldn't agree more, and the class of 2028 is definitely bringing a new energy that I am very appreciative.
Yes, a special energy.
Special energy that is alluding to sort of the reflection that I was doing over the summer is welcomed.
Yes,
for sure.
Awesome. Well, the Foundation's roller coaster has officially left the station, and the start of the academic year always holds so much promise. It's been a long time since I've been a student, but I still love the feeling of a fresh start, new beginnings, and don't get me started on the school supplies. I am powerless against stationery and books. How was your week, Roshan? I bet this brought back a lot of memories for you.
Lots and lots of memories, which we will speak to very shortly.
Awesome.
But I actually need to ask you about this because I don't know if I did last year.
Yeah.
School supplies.
Yeah.
How do you feel being a mother of a preteen and school supplies? What's that like these days?
My son is about to turn 12
Right.
toward the end of September. He's just starting junior high, so just started grade 7 on the day of this recording, actually.
Oh, wow.
So he's always on my mind, but he's been on my mind a lot more than usual today because I'm really hoping that he's going to have a really good start.
Yeah.
In terms of school supplies, I was really excited for him to come shopping with me and pick out all of his binders and all the things he needed. But he's a really chill guy. And for one thing, he was like personally offended that all the back to school stuff showed up in the stores like super early.
Oh, wow.
So like he thought that was wrong.
Right.
It should not happen like the beginning of July.
Right.
And when I asked him to come join me, he was very relaxed and really said I could have fun and I could pick for him. So,
Wow.
so I got to pick a lot of things, which suits me well because I like that stuff anyway.
What's your favorite thing to pick out for school supplies?
Oh, I love pens
Okay.
and nice notebooks.
Right.
Yeah. So I like gel pens sometimes. I like ballpoint pens. I mean, blue ink is my favorite, but I'm kind of partial to purple. So,
That thought had never crossed my mind. The reason I ask is that both Kat, my partner, is also a family doc, as well as my oldest son Leo, love the smell of new books.
Yes.
And they're not a carbon copy of one another, but they're pretty
They're
darn close.
yeah.
And it's just amazing to watch and see how similar he is with her with so many things.
Yeah.
And one of the things is books, like she didn't even tell him about this. And like when he's 3.5 or 4, he's like, oh, I got to smell that book. He's like,
and just the sensation, where it's a little bit stiff. You can start to break it in a little bit. But another thing, I also have a soft spot for old musty books that are from a used bookstore or from the library. So, yeah.
Both make me slightly nauseous. Not the books, but the smell of the books. I don't know why. It's something that's triggered in me, but
I mean, yeah, it is kind of funky sometimes, but
and that's partly why I was glad that heading into medical school, we actually didn't have very many physical textbooks.
Right. Yeah.
Just the anatomy ones, and for the most part, the rest were electronic versions. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of universities are trying to go textbook free now. So yeah, we'll see. Well, we approach every new stage in our lives with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, as well as from different perspectives. And that's what I really loved about the discussion we shared with students during the 5-minute poem session. For me, one of the things I highlighted in my poem was this idea of like a split identity. So like Dr. Yu mentioned in her introduction, we all wear many different hats, but sometimes it's hard to know where you fit in and what to be in what context. So for me, I'm Egyptian Canadian. I'm born here and raised in Edmonton. In the home, we were brought up with cultural and religious values.
Right.
But growing up here in the early 80s, I was never Canadian enough.
No.
And whenever we would visit our relatives in Egypt, I was never Egyptian enough. So then that kind of gives you some, almost like an identity crisis. Like, who am I? Where do I belong? And we could even extend that professionally. So I'm a researcher, but at the same time, I'm an educator, and I have an interest in education and teaching. So, we do have these different roles, and sometimes it can be hard to reconcile those.
Yeah, and that actually ties in nicely to the exercise about the 5-minute poem, which was to highlight the different parts of our social identity, the different groups that we identify with, and how that intersectionality actually becomes incredibly important in education in our lives. And that's something that post-secondary education and I would say medical education and medicine has struggled with.
Yeah.
One of the things that I struggled with this summer was exactly around identity, how far I've come. You could almost call it a bit of a midlife crisis, just around career and family, and thinking about how to not reconcile, but truly explore is probably the better way.
Yeah.
All the different parts of my social identity,
Yeah.
and ensure that in my work, in my family life, that I am exploring that and ensuring that I'm getting the most out of all those components of my social identity.
And that you kind of feel comfortable living them, you know, instead of always feeling like you have to switch gears or switch hats.
Right.
Yeah, you're just one person. So the opportunity for reflection and reminding ourselves of our background is so valuable, especially when we embark on a new phase in our lives or engage in a new opportunity when there might be mixed feelings which are not necessarily positive or optimistic. So did you have worries when you started med school?
I had a ton of worries.
Yeah.
And I would have to say there were three main ones. One, probably the one that most of our listeners have, is going to be whether I stack up against the people around me. Have I not done sort of the prerequisites that other people have, especially now when you're looking at the variety. I mean, medical school used to be very homogenous in terms of who came in.
Because everybody had to take pre-med training, right?
Yeah. And now, without that, you can definitely feel that worry. So that's where one part of the imposter syndrome sort of comes in. Then really finding out your place in medicine. I think depending on your view of medicine in general, it becomes a challenge when you start thinking about, well, you know, how do I fit into medicine specifically, because it's such an all-encompassing endeavor.
Were you worried about CARMS?
I was
on your
not.
first day?
I was not. I didn't even know what CARMS was, to be honest.
That's so good to hear.
I've always been that kind of person where like those types of things don't worry me as much. Like the med school application process did. I'm not sort of underestimating the effect that CARMS can have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think I was just the type of person that I felt that once I got into medical school, that things would probably be okay. And that's the optimist.
It would work out.
Even though I'm extremely anxious, that optimist inside of me would say that. And then the last word that I had that was, again, underlying all of this, which is why we talk about the 5-minute poem, is who am I? Right? And the worry about understanding yourself. And that, I don't think really came to light until after residency, and which is why we want to talk about identity earlier rather than later. So I think those are probably the big worries that I had.
Yeah. You know, it's great to hear you share these reflections because I experienced many of these feelings when I entered grad school, and definitely as I started postdoctoral training with Dr. John Hall at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, where a lot of what we know about cardiovascular and renal physiology was discovered by him and his mentor, Dr. Arthur Guyton. I can even say that despite being older and more established in our careers, we shared a lot of these feelings as we embarked on the new adventure coordinating the Foundations block several years ago now. I mean, I've even got butterflies as we enter into round 4 this year.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll ever go away completely. So those feelings of excitement, hopefulness, and even anxiety never go away and are actually a very common experience that we don't talk about. And our listeners out there might have many shared feelings about starting medical school and the path of medical education in general. Many of you are excited about finally getting into school after pursuing a career that you may have dreamt of for a very long time. And a lot of you are excited about the new information and skills that you'll learn while meeting new people and making friends.
I also noticed that meeting new people is a common source of trepidation as well.
I mean, when I first started up until probably very recently, my social anxiety was maybe not on full display, but definitely very apparent to me. And I found it incredibly hard and worrisome to try to network. And network's not a great idea, but expand my social network within medicine because of the imposter syndrome, because of the social anxiety, because of your own anxiety of not really knowing who it is. And
you were new here.
And I was new here.
You were new here to Edmonton, right?
I'm from Ottawa, right?
You didn't know anybody in your med school class when you came here, right?
Nope, I didn't. And in fact, the group that I really bonded with at first were mostly people from Ontario, right? So who were from Ontario and had come out here for medical school, either because they had lived here before or had some sort of connection. And when my partner, Kat, she her parents had actually moved to Edmonton, even though that year or the year before, which is why, to Fort McMurray, which is why she was looking at Edmonton or Calgary for medical school. But she and I were actually some of the few people that had never actually lived in Alberta before.
Okay.
And my relationship with her definitely benefited from the fact that we were of a very small group of people that had never lived in Alberta before.
Yeah. I find it so fascinating that together we're a group encompassing different ages, experiences, and training backgrounds, but we likely share so many common themes between us as we start this new step in our lives.
And as we learned during the 5-minute poem exercise, we also bring something as individuals different to the table. If we practice recognizing our roots and how they've shaped us and how they shape the way that we interact with other people, there is a potential to make powerful connections in the medical profession and in our personal lives too.
That was a great moment in Foundations this week, including the powerful and captivating presentations by our special guests, Bean Gill and Marlis Taylor.
Oh my goodness. It is always, and is always a pleasure to engage with all of our listeners out there. And it was great to have our two speakers back again.
Yeah.
Because they do still provide a unique perspective of our community and hopefully give each and every one of you an opportunity for self-reflection. And maybe you might not realize it, but also the start of self-reflection on your personal identity formation. It might seem that they're talking about specific topics like accessibility or houselessness and support of marginalized communities. But when I hear them speak, I think of that, but I also think about what my professional identity formation is looking like right now. Is it satisfying to me, especially hearing from their inspiring stories? Should I be making a change in what I'm actually doing, especially clinically, right?
Yes,
especially hearing what they're saying, that professional identity formation piece, there's constantly a reflection. And I think, to be fair, the reason that I can even do that is because I'm a family doctor.
Right.
I can pick up, and other than the fact that I'm literally tethered to the U of A from a clinic standpoint, outside of that, I can pick up and go wherever I want and do whatever I want. And it's that, for instance, was something that I just realized today, right? Like around the work that I might want to do.
Right.
I always have the dream or the idea of picking up and doing something different. And it's because I made the decision to do family medicine.
Yeah, it gives you that versatility, I think.
Huge versatility. So that as your professional identity formation changes, you actually have the ability to move with that from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, there's never really an end of a road, is there? Like there's always possibility.
It's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
but this is where good mentorship comes in and good support comes in to actually tell you where the road should end. Right?
Yeah. A common theme shared by Bean and Marlis was giving people a chance and having faith in others. That message really resonated with me, and I thought we could expand that to giving ourselves a chance.
I'm so glad you raised that. In medical school, it can be tempting to compare ourselves with our peers or others that we might interact with, but focusing on our potential to succeed and pursuing our personal best is way more productive.
Yeah, that idea of being the best can be pervasive in our culture, can't it? In so many different arenas. I'm reminded of a keynote lecture I heard long ago that was delivered by an academic mentor. An important message was that striving to be the best can wind up working against us. His message was that you don't necessarily want to be the best, since it implies that there's no more room to grow and improve.
Yeah. I think striving to be the best, let's bring in another concept here that we'll touch upon in the huddle sessions, the mindset, so fixed versus growth mindset, right? I think what your mentor is alluding to is, or one of the things that they're alluding to, is that when you have this idea of being the best, it's kind of hard to fit in growth mindset. Now there are people who do both. But I think it's incredibly hard when you think that I'm going to be the best at something and also think about growth mindset, because growth mindset versus a fixed mindset means that we're always learning, we're always challenging ourselves, and we're humans. We can't actually be the best in everything.
That's true.
And so the growth mindset, if we embrace that, actually helps to inform us, I think, to be better humans by actually expanding on our own personal experiences and our knowledge base.
Right. And that speaks to one of Bean's themes is kind of take away limitations and consider the possibilities, what is possible. So that goes along very well with a growth mindset. Going back to giving ourselves and others a chance, our guest spoke of this in the context of patience, but to me this also extends to our peers as well as our instructors and mentors.
Acknowledging that we are all here with the intention to work together to support each other, and eventually patience in the future can be really powerful and help guide us in our day-to-day interactions. It can help us develop those skills that are necessary to communicate sensitive information, such as feedback or difficult news. That's really what the stories of the week are all about. We need to think beyond a clinical presentation and consider the patient's point of view.
I found the perspectives shared by our guests to be impactful. Imagine how each of us can serve patients and the community better by recognizing what else may be going on around them as individuals. The science concepts we also cover in Foundations are useful in the sense that if we have a better understanding of how things are happening in the body in health and disease, the better we're able to explain these things to our patients in a way that honors them.
So true. What a great start to Foundations this week. We are so fortunate to have had the opportunity to meet a lot of you in person and share our vision for this first block of your medical education journey. We hope that the course organization is clear and that we can help facilitate a supportive and effective start to your program in partnership with the many faculty we heard from this week and their resources.
These themes are also going to be so helpful when it's time to engage in interactive exercises like the discovery learning and team-based learning activities we have coming up. Or maybe I misspoke. I think I should have said DL and TBL. I always give you a hard time about this, Roshan, but what is it particularly about the medical field and this relentless use of acronyms? And every time I think I've learned all of the acronyms, new ones come up.
It's to exercise our hierarchy and our superiority, because we're clearly it's clearly beneath us to actually speak to like describe something. We have to condense it so that you ask us, and then what is it, right?
Then you have the power to elaborate on that.
It keeps the wall up. Seriously, I mean, I don't know. I still don't know to this day. I mean, I'd actually ask some of our researchers in MedEd, because they've probably seen more acronyms than I have, right? Yeah. And you know what the funny thing is? I don't know how much you've seen of the MedEd literature. I know you have family who works in MedEd research, but I also find that we're also very quick to create acronyms in our research. Yeah, like every time we have a framework.
It's a habit almost.
Like, that doesn't happen in basic science, right? Yeah.
Like, we are trained to avoid acronyms as much as possible.
Right? Well, I mean, think about the cardiology trials or the diabetes trials that are out there. They always have to come up with some new acronym, and they like MacGyver it into this thing that I'm at this point, some of them don't make any sense. Yeah. Right? Like, before I was like, oh, that's clever. And now I'm like, you're just trying too hard.
Yeah. So do you remember what they mean? What all the acronyms mean?
I mean, I'm a product of this program, so it's almost impossible.
So it becomes an additional language.
I will have to say PNME I didn't know. Okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah, PNME is probably the only one that I can't say off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's really impressive, Roshan. There's hope. I can learn along with you. Although every time I think I have a handle on the acronyms, some new ones crop up, like SOAP note and everything. So our listeners out there, I empathize with you in terms of all of the acronyms.
And now we have to get to some other really important discussions in our episode today, like what's your favorite food?
That's tough. That's tough to pinpoint because I'm from the perspective of live to eat rather than eat to live. I would have to say, so bread and cheese, number one. Right tied with that is pita bread with kebabs and hummus, which were honored in my 5-minute poem. I could probably eat that every day, all day, including breakfast. So what about you, Roshan? What's your favorite food?
Well, I mean, you know what my favorite food is, but before I say it, I need to. What are some? We're sitting next to a hidden gem here. What are some hidden gems of Egyptian cuisine that not a lot of people know about? Because it's not a common cuisine that we see out in the community, depending on, because I don't, is there a large Egyptian population here?
There is a pretty good Egyptian population, but there aren't actually many restaurants. A lot of them would be Lebanese or other nationalities. So I would say a hidden gem that I could share. So a lot of people are familiar with some of the sweets, which use phyllo pastry, and they're very crispy. So like baklava, for example. But you can use that same pastry to make savory dishes. And one of my favorite things is making little stuffed triangles. So it's almost like a samosa, almost. But it's phyllo pastry. And inside you can usually put ground beef with seasonings, or you can make another version like feta cheese and spinach, for example. So kind of a savory side, and they're in neat little packages like triangles. That's the way my mom makes them.
What are they called?
We just call it phyllo.
Okay, phyllo, okay.
Like in my house.
I mean, that sounds amazing. I have a soft spot for. I've loved Lebanese cooking and cuisine, having grown up in Ottawa, because there's a fairly large population there. We'll eventually on the podcast talk about our love for shawarma, as well as how I'm very picky about my shawarma. But my favorite food, cereal. I mean, I'm a very westernized East Indian person here, so as much as I love the Indian sweets that directly convert into diabetes because they are just jam-packed with so much sugar.
They're so popular. People are making songs about them.
I know, right?
Cereal.
I mean, and I still haven't pulled the trigger yet on that cup, with the cereal and the milk.
The to-go,
the to-go. But definitely cereal. Fruit Loops is still up there, even though that's probably not a lot of people's favorite cereal. I don't know why, but
do you
I
think
just like
each
the
color
birthday
tastes
cake.
different?
Oh, I mean, in my mind it does, but it probably doesn't.
So would you say that's your current favorite?
I mean, it still is. I'd have to say Cinnamon Toast Crunch is also another big one. And the Reese's Pieces ones is a very nice one. But those are my top 3 for sure.
Awesome. Now, in our first year as block coordinators, I asked you a random question in our first episode of season 1 that turned out to be the real test of our friendship. I would say that the question is now elevated to the status of perennial favorite.
For us.
For us. I don't know how many people like it, but we're going to go with it. I know you're a musician and you're into alternative rock, but are you also a Nickelback fan?
Absolutely not. Although the vitriol that band has sustained over time, I think has probably swung a little bit too much in the other direction. They are still a Canadian touchstone when it comes to the music that has come from our country. So there should be some special source of pride from having Nickelback not only be Canadian but also be Albertan.
But you don't have any of their songs on your playlist?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not, and I think it's just a challenge for me, really. I think with how pop infused their songs became, it became a real difficult time for me to actually continue listening to them. But it's not to say that I didn't. I used to have them on my playlist.
Yeah.
No, we didn't have playlists back then.
Yeah.
I used to have it on my CD,
you
or
burned
my
a CD.
Sony. What was those? The discs.
The
Did you remember?
Discman.
No, and then they had their own little disc ones, like not the Walkman, but the
Oh,
disc.
yeah, the small one.
The small
Yeah.
ones. Oh, those were epic.
That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'm a fan. Although some friends have mentioned that maybe they use like a formula or something like that. So, but I'm a fan. It'll be interesting to see how the class of 2028 feels about this. What do you think, listeners? Nickelback, yes or no? Be sure to place your vote during our first weekly review session coming up at the end of week 2.
And how many marks for this? Will this be on the final exam?
Yes. No, actually, no marks, and it's just for fun. We'll check out the results next week and reveal whether myself or Roshan is the winner of this battle in our first weekly review session. So before we wrap up this episode, if you were to go back and tell first year med student Roshan something at the end of O week, what would it be?
Oh, I'm going to make myself cry. You're good enough.
Yeah,
You're good enough for this.
I like that.
You might not realize it, but you are definitely good enough inside to be the person that you want to be, and to be the physician that you want to be, and just be the caregiver that you want to be. That was something that was really important for me, to actually be a caregiver.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that has been realized. I think there's still a lot more, but you are good enough. I ended my talk with the third years on this, about getting to the point where you feel good inside. And I'm getting there, but I would say that from an outside perspective, recognizing that we are all good enough to start this journey, even though there's lots of work to be done. What would you tell your younger self,
I like
Shireen?
that. I would say be true to yourself and your values, even in the face of tremendous pressure to change or mold yourself into someone you're not. I would also tell my younger self something that I actually tell myself all the time: stay humble. The more we learn, the more we realize that our knowledge is so small compared to what's out there, keeping in mind that information is actively being discovered. So it's okay to say, I don't know, and we don't need to know everything all the time.
And hopefully in Foundations and Beyond, we can support our students in developing the confidence to say, I don't know, and equip our listeners with the tools to access and use trusted resources.
You got it. Lifelong learning and a growth mindset for the win.
All right, class of 2028 and others, it was wonderful to meet you. Thank you all for an amazing orientation week experience.
Take care, everyone, and we'll catch up with you soon.